Welcome to the Legendary Upside YouTube channel and podcast. My name is Pat Corain. You can follow all of my content at legendaryupside.com. With me today, Sacrilegious and Shady Advice, two of the guys helping me with a very exciting project that we're going to be talking about today for Legendary Upside and the Sidekick. Guys, how's it going?
It's going well. Pretty excited to share everything that we're going to be talking about today. I feel like it's been in the works for a while, so I've barely been able to keep my lips sealed on it. So I'm glad we're doing it finally.
Yeah, felt like we couldn't make it any longer without Sack leaking something at some point. So it's good to be able to talk about it so that we don't have to keep his muzzle on for too long.
That's how we kind of sketch out our timelines. Because whenever Sack's ready to just shout it from the rooftops, we hop on YouTube. But yeah, so what we want to talk about today is that Shady, as many people already know, is DFS whiz, got some crazy math working behind the scenes to help him generate these very plus EV DFS lineups and putting that brain to work trying to figure out if we can improve our process here for drafting best ball teams. What we've done is we've had Shady simulate out the 2025 NFL season and best ball season, as we'll get to. To do that, we completely redesigned the Legendary Upside rankings process. So we've been working on this for over a year to create ranges of outcomes to give Shady what he needs to then be able to create fantasy point outcomes for every player in the player pool for every week of the NFL season, generating tens of thousands of simulated seasons so that we can sample from those and actually figure out who's likely to score points when. Does that kind of sum up what we did, Shady?
That's a very good summary. Didn't even have to know any math to come up with that.
Yeah, which I appreciate not being able to have to do. That's why we have you on the team. Let me ask you about what you've accounted for in these simulations. Do we have injury baked in?
Yep, we've got that in there based on what you guys thought the chances of things might be.
Correlation, in-game correlation, season-long correlation between teammates.
Those are all there.
Suspension, guys missing the start of the season, in-season bench risk, that's accounted for?
Yes, and yes.
We've got veteran types of players who might tail off, rookies who might kind of be coming on and be playoff league winners. Is that baked in?
Yep, those are in there.
And then what about veterans who just are like good and then stay good, or rookies being complete busts? If we
as unhappy as you are to admit that those things both happen sometimes, so those are in there.
That one took some convincing to make sure I accounted for. But yes, we have accounted for that kind of downside for the rookies, and some veterans stay healthy, as we actually saw a decent bit last year. So trying to account for all of these things allows us to put some math behind some of the ideas that we kind of all have as the best ball community, and then make better decisions with a lot of complexity as we try to figure out how to put all these teams together in various formats on various sites. So I think this should be pretty helpful in drafting better teams, deliver a lot of value to the Leg Up subscribers, which is the whole point. What does this allow us to do? It does two things. One, we can evaluate teams that have already been drafted in a much more robust way. It also allows us to help build better teams as we go, and we'll get to that. So let's start with evaluating teams, but we are going to talk about building better teams and tease the new features that we're working on for the Sidekick. That's really, I think, the most exciting part of this, is that we can actually use this math to help generate better dynamic rankings in the Sidekick. So that'll be in the second half of the stream here. But for the first half, Sack, we asked some people to submit teams that they've drafted. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we had some Leg Up community members that were nice enough to participate in this stream with us. They sent us their exposure CSV from Underdog, and we were able to take all of those teams, which is around 2,000 or so teams, and then we could simulate the teams that we were given and score those based on the quality of the team. And we're looking at lots of different things that make up the overall value of the team. Things like how likely are they to advance out of the first round? How strong is this team in week 15 when it gets there? What about week 16? What about if it makes it to the finals? How good is this team there? And then all of those things come together to give us a score that lets us know how good this team is compared to all of the other teams we were able to evaluate. So
these are all BBM teams, right?
No, some of them are going to
Okay.
be puppy teams. Some of them are going to be schnauzer teams. Whatever people drafted and sent in is what we use. We did have a couple people send in alternative formats like Eliminator and Weekly Winners. But to be honest, I think I only got one person that sent in Weekly Winners and maybe 2 total people that sent in Eliminators so far, maybe with like a handful of sprints and marathons in there. So we only had a handful of teams in those. So it wasn't super useful to be able to say, hey, of these 8 teams, this was the best one. But we do have the ability to evaluate all those different formats as well. So that might be a fun idea for us to go over in the future when we are looking at more specific stuff to those formats.
And when we're evaluating a schnauzer team or a puppy team versus a BBM team, what's different about that?
Yeah, so for those teams, most of the outputs are going to be pretty similar. The only difference would be that your requirements for a team might be a little bit different in the weeks 15, 16, and 17 based on how many people advance out of each round, the final size, etc., that type of stuff. But all of those are 2 out of 12 advance from round 1. So they should be pretty identical for the early season. And most of those are just similar enough in structure. Hey, the finals, the payouts are about the same as far as how top heavy they are. They're all pretty, similar in the number of total teams in the finals. They're similar in the pods, in the actual playoffs themselves. So those contests are all going to be pretty similar. Where you really get
if we'd gotten a big dog that we had, that would be
different. That'd be different because you advance more out of round 1. So that's a pretty major difference. And then the small finals is also a big difference there. Where you'll see the largest difference, obviously, is between the formats, where if you're looking at a sprint team compared to looking at a marathon team or an eliminator team, those are going to be wildly different in what you're wanting to accomplish with those rosters based on the contest parameters.
One of the reasons that we were really excited about this idea is that it allows us to, as we'll get to later with the sidekick, provide better dynamic rankings for each contest type. So, the high stake stuff with different round 1 advanced structure, different playoff week stuff, smaller finals, that'll be dialed in specifically to those formats. And then we also can support more formats like the Eliminator, things like that. We can actually have rankings for those and have dynamic rankings for those much, much more easily with this new process. By the time you're watching this, we'll probably have also launched static rankings, just the standard rankings on the site for the Eliminator as well. So this process support helps us do that, but then it also helps us create dynamic rankings specifically to those additional structures and different types of payout structures, final sizes, that you find in some of the higher stake stuff or just some of the smaller tournaments. So let's get to some of these teams.
As Pat goes in, I just wanted to add that I think Zach used the word scoring to talk about how we were evaluating these lineups. And I think it can be, you might think, oh, we looked at the lineup and it scored well on this metric and it did that. That's not what we're doing. We are literally scoring every player in every week of the season, figuring out who hits your roster in that simulation of the season. And every week we're deciding if in that season how likely it was that your roster may have advanced. When it advances, we're deciding how well it may have done in week 15, et cetera, all the way through to figuring out how well it might have scored and getting you money in the playoffs in every simulation of the season that we do. So we are not just trying to grade them on these things that we think are good. We are actually trying to say for this roster, when it scores points, when do they happen and how.
Which is why we can then tailor it specifically to
which is why we're able to tune it based on the structures.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got a lineup here. So we've got some teams we'll share. Most of them are draft boards. We have some pictures of just the lineups later on. But go through, I think one of the things that I find interesting about these is that we actually do see decent variety in terms of the structures that you have. It's not a zero running back machine that we've built. And we do see, kind of different onesie strategies as well. But yeah, we can go through these one by one. So this team has 4 receivers through 5 rounds: Puka, Brian Thomas, Tet McMillan, Calvin Ridley. 3 running backs through the first 7: Chase Brown, RJ Harvey, DeAndre Swift. Tax on 2 more receivers here: Stephon Diggs, Trey Harris. 2 quarterbacks in the window: Justin Herbert and Trevor Lawrence. Jake Ferguson, Brenton Strange, Pat Fryermuth are the 3 tight ends grabbed in the 12th through 15th. And then some running back depth with Tyler Algier, Roschon Johnson, Marshawn Lloyd, and a great price on Pat Bryant, which would really be helping this team. Anything that jumps out to you about this team, guys?
Yeah, he's got both his quarterbacks stacked up. He got a pretty good price on RJ Harvey as he's continued to move up.
That's true.
And there's lots of players here that we like in the leg up rankings. That's certainly going to be part of it. Players that we think are good players are going to show up well in the Sims. So that is part of it. But you're
getting
also,
Brian Thomas in the middle of the second.
Brian Thomas.
Brian Thomas
that's
is
doing a lot of work.
Pretty good. But you'll see as we go through these teams, it's not just, these are all the players that they like. There's lots of diversity there. When I look at how this team grades and all of the relative to the other teams, how it's simmed in each of the different categories of regular season advance rate versus the playoff weeks, it's actually pretty steady all across the board. It's very similar. It's like 96th percentile, 97th percentile, 96th percentile, 97th percentile, and all that together. A lot of teams will bounce around and have, they're really strong. But by the time they get to week 17, they're not quite as strong. Maybe they petered out a little. But this one is pretty consistent across the board. It's actually the strongest in week 15 of all of its grades. So it is
interesting.
Peaking at the right time.
Yeah, good mix of veteran production. One thing that's interesting about this team is it has DeAndre Swift and Roschon Johnson, but it's not overwhelmingly strong at running back. So I could see why, and you got RJ Harvey as your running back too. So kind of having Bears backfield covered does make sense intuitively to me on this team. The type of tactic that I think fits the build pretty well.
You also got a Chase Brown slide there too, I think, right?
That's true.
On the left half
Chase Brown slide. Nice value on Roschon one as well, because Roschon's been moving up fast.
All right, let's go to, so that was from Anton in the Discord. Shout out to you. All right, Artillery Frost here had only 2 receivers through the first 4 rounds, but Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Jonathan Taylor in the 3rd. It's kind of funny, because, those 2 flip places in most drafts. Really nice price on Jaden Daniels. Gets Zay Flowers in the 5th. Alvin Kamara, pretty nice value in the 6th there. He's usually on this other side of the board. George Pickens. This is clearly
that'll do it right there. George Pickens 75 helps.
Johnny Smith, nice price on DeAndre Swift. Rashid Shaheed, Bashal Tutin, Trevor Lawrence, Brenton Strange. You've got him stacked with the tight end and running back there. Zach Ertz, Austin Eckler, A.D. Mitchell, Michael Wilson, and Jalen Lane. So one that's not super strong at receiver to start, but you get George Pickens at a big value. So it's like you get an extra 5th round pick on this team. And then it's, the receiver depth gets filled out at the end, plus Rashid Shaheed. Pretty good team. Anything jump out?
Yeah, this one does something where I don't want to, tip too much of the sidekick's hand, but the sidekick does seem to really like near the end of drafts. It thinks that there's a big group of receivers that are pretty similar, and it thinks a lot of people are overpaying for them, and it's happy taking ones that are pretty comparable just for much cheaper. And so it allows you to do things like, hey, I'm going to take Trevor Lawrence here as a quarterback instead. And it doesn't matter that I missed out on Cedric Tillman, who went 8 picks later. My opportunity cost of, Trevor Lawrence and Brenton Strange, and I can't draft Cedric Tillman, really doesn't matter very much because I got Michael Wilson. And are you telling me you're so confident Cedric Tillman is a 4 rounds better pick than Michael Wilson. You know, I don't think anyone would say like take that bet straight up for real money, but people do it in best ball drafts every single day. And so that's something that the Sims identified as, hey, this is an advantage that we can exploit. And this drafter, Artillery Frost, executed it in his draft in a way that I could definitely see the Sim version of the Sidekick doing this.
We'll get to the Sidekick a little bit more, but I'm glad you brought that up because we'll get to it in a lot more later. But I'm glad you brought that up because a key piece of what we're going to be doing here in terms of delivering better dynamic rankings is being able to account for what is available later in the draft. And so when you have the simulations of the season and the actual, fantasy outcomes accounted for that way, you can then start to look at, okay, well, what is available later in the draft, like more specifically, not just like generally, like I can get, a receiver kind of like this later, but we're going like, no, I mean, like these guys are like really similar potentially. And what is not similar? What is, kind of drying up that you can take advantage of. So this is, I think, a good example of that concept. These 3 receivers, you're getting receiver depth, but you're just paying very, very little for the extra, depth. You get your first 5 with decent capital, your first 4 with excellent capital, given the steal on Pickens here. All right, let's move to this team, another Puka team. AJ Brown, Josh Jacobs, nice value there. DJ Moore, Joe Mixon in the 5th. We do tend to like Mixon, but this is a really nice price on Mixon, who tends to be a little bit, like on DraftKings and stuff, he's in the 4th round, but even on Underdog, typically more 4-5-ish. Chuba in the 6th is awesome. Pickens again in the 7th. Caleb Williams, Jonnu Smith, Colston Loveland. This is a 3-quarterback team with Justin Herbert and Drake May, which, Zach, when you take Drake May, it automatically puts you in the 99th percentile, I believe. Is that right? Rachaad White, Xavier Legette, Hunter Henry, stacked up with May, DJ Giddens, Michael Wilson, and Demario Douglas. Anything jump out about this team?
I mean, yeah, this is just a sick team. He got a bunch of values. I will let you know, this is one of the best regular season teams, and it makes sense. He got Joe Mixon, who we think is a value, anyway, and he got him after ADP. He gets Chuba Hubbard after ADP, and he taxed that on with Josh Jacobs. It's just, if your room is willing to give you all these running backs that like a lot of people are just like hesitant to draft. It's like, oh, that feels yucky. I don't want to spend that early capital on a running back. But we think they're reasonably priced, and then they just keep giving you value on them.
It's kind of a hyper fragile type of build. He has 5 running backs, but his 4th is Rachaad White. So he's really putting the, these running backs have to deliver, right? He's really putting it on their shoulders, which it makes a lot of sense. You draft 3 veteran starters who should score well right away, and you're hoping they just continue to do that all season.
Yeah, that is the 3rd best overall team for regular season. So we do think that one has a good chance of advancing.
3rd best among the teams that were submitted. That's
just
if you don't finish 3rd place in the regular season prize, we're not saying.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, this one's really fun. Deschmutz, is that how you pronounce this? I don't know. Deschmutz, maybe. All right. Next team here: CeeDee Lamb, Devon Achane. Nice price on him. Chase Brown, Tet McMillan in the back half of the 4th. Jalen Waddle, Juwan Jennings, George Pickens, Emeka Egbuka. First time we've seen someone kind of attack this wide receiver pocket like that. But it ends up working out well because you get DeAndre Swift at a great value in the 9th. Colson Loveland, Bashal Tutin, Dak Prescott, Jake Ferguson, Bryce Young, Tyler Algier, Pat Freiermuth, Aaron Rodgers, Tyler Lockett. So after going hard at receiver, this team only tacks on a 7th receiver with Tyler Lockett, which I think is pretty interesting. Not zero running back, but you do have 6 receivers through 8 rounds. So receiver depth, less important here. That's something that jumps out to me. And then allows you to go 3 quarterback on this build with 3 guys that like maybe you could have stopped it too, but
Dak, right?
You get a great price on Dak. Yeah,
Dak.
incredible.
And he's got everyone, everything's stacked up, right? He's got, the Dak double with CD.
He binked the Dak double.
Oh, he's got the Dak triple then. Yeah, he's got Pickens, CD, and Ferguson.
Right.
That's really good Swift price. He's also got Bryce Young stacked up with Tet, and then he's got Aaron Rodgers stacked up with Freiermuth in the event that Rodgers were to sign.
Well, the Aaron Rodgers was stacked
right
with
now.
Pickens.
I don't believe the Sims know for certain that Aaron Rodgers is on the Steelers.
They don't, but there is a chance he is and a chance he isn't.
Correct.
But this one's funny because he grabbed Pickens, Freiermuth, and then stacks with Rodgers. You still have the Freiermuth side, but Binks, Pickens.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Yeah.
This is also a crazy team. This one is, I believe, the second best Week 16 team. And when you look at it, it kind of makes sense. He's got a lot of rookies. He's got Emeka Egbuka, right? He's got Tet. He had, I think he had Tootin later. He has Loveland.
Yep.
So he's got a lot of firepower late. And then he also managed to combine that with like plenty of resources that are going to be scoring early. He got the 2 early running backs that should be able to help kind of carry that running back room along.
Yep.
He's got Chan and Brown, and then he's got Lamb, Waddle, Jennings, Pickens that all should be solid contributors early. And then, Tet could come on right away. He could burn a little slower, but yeah, I really like how this one is structured, and the Sims agree.
All right, let's go to east of Ethan's team here. Nico Collins, Amon-Ra, 3 straight running backs, Chase Brown, Kyron Williams, Joe Mixon, Calvin Ridley, Jaden Reed, and Khalil Shakir. So it's all wide receiver and running back through 8. Jared Goff, Jordan Mason, CJ Stroud, Cam Ward. So 3 quarterback and a little bit of a reach on Ward, but it's stacked. And the 3 quarterback, I think you'll notice 3 quarterbacks built like this tends to be okay here. So, or more than okay in a lot of cases. So the reach on Ward, it's not, we're not dinging you on your ADP value. It's stacked with Ridley, and it's built well. Jake Ferguson, Hunter Henry, and Dalton Schultz. So it's a double 3 onesie team. Kind of interesting. And then Javonte Williams, which is a pretty good price based on where he tends to generally go now. And then Michael Wilson and Tyler Lockett. Anything about this team jump out?
Yeah, as far as like how it scores, it's the second best team score overall, and it's also the second best regular season team score. It's the very best Week 15 and 16 score. However, this one does drop off a little bit in Week 17. And when you look at it, I think, you see the running backs. It's veteran running back, veteran running back, veteran running back, veteran running back, veteran running back. Yeah, after Jordan Mason.
Yep. Javonte,
and so
like the most veteran running back.
Right. So we are missing a little late season rookie firepower. Now there's certain, it grades pretty well still. So it's not like it's saying, oh, once you make it to Week 17, you're toast. Like, right. No, that's just, if there was one fly in the ointment for this one, that's its weakest point. But again, relative to all the other teams, it's still a very strong team. So
when was Chase Brown falling this far in drafts? Like, what is going on here? Why was I not in these rooms?
Don't get jealous, Shaidy. That's a fun structure because I think one way to think about why this team is simming well is that it's got a lot of firepower at receiver, right? You do have 5 receivers through 8 rounds and 2 receivers to start your draft. So it's really hard to say this team's weak at receiver, especially because Calvin Ridley is kind of going more at the beginning of the 5th, and you got him at 601. Pretty good price on Jaden Reed. Really good price on Khalil Shakir. He tends to be more in the early 7th now. So good firepower. Plus, to get Nico and Amon-Ra at the 1-2 turn, that's a really nice start. But then you're strong at running back pretty clearly with the value on Javonte plus the 3 guys. Jordan Mason there is nice. And then you're strong at quarterback and tight end because you have 3 of each. So even though you didn't spend much capital at either position overall, or at least a ton of capital, hard to say that you're weak at either position. Tight end you'd probably say is the weakest position on this team, but it's not like you're overly concerned about it. That's one way to build a good team. Just be strong at every position. All right, let's look at this draft from Eric here. Puka, London, nice price on London. Chase Brown, Xavier Worthy, Jalen Hurts, very underpriced right now, we believe. Chuba Hubbard in the 6th. That's pretty good. Khalil Shakir, TJ Hawkinson, Travis Kelce, Pacheco, Michael Penix, Ramondre Stevenson, Dallas Goedert stacked up with Hurts, Dak Prescott. Very nice price on Dak Prescott. My God. So this is a 3-quarterback team with Jalen Hurts, but you get Prescott at 162, probably going to outscore some of the guys going around him there. Wan'Dale Robinson, Blake Corum, Pat Bryant, and Ty Felton. Any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I wish I had Dak at 162 teams. That sounds fun.
Sounds pretty good. All right. I mean, that's a big part of it, I would say, for this team, but just another team that's, I mean, this one's a little bit thinner at running back compared to some of the examples we've seen recently, but to get Chuba in the 6th, and then some
getting some Pacheco, CLV.
Pacheco, yep. Big time CLV on Pacheco.
Well,
that's like 30 picks-ish of CLV right now, if that holds. Yeah. So that's, you didn't spend a ton of running back, but
this one is similar to the last one in that it's, of all of the metrics, its weakest one is in week 17. And it is, again, similar. Hey, we're a little light on rookies here. You know, our rookie firepower is like, all right, we got Pat Bryant and Ty Felton peaking at the end of the season. So that is one where, you know, if there's one wart on that one, it's maybe a little more invested in rookies. But I mean, this was the 19th best team overall. So I don't, out of, you know, a couple thousand. So I don't think you can really complain too much.
Let's go to Gobler's team here. So Jefferson, then 2 running backs, then 3 receivers. Travis Hunter in the 5th. That's pretty nice. George Pickens in the 6th. RJ Harvey in the 7th. When was this draft? Is this a big board team? Or is it Josh Downs, Jonnu Smith, Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, Tyjae Spears, Jake Ferguson, and Cam Ward. Then Wan'Dale, Pat Freiermuth, Jalen Wright, and Pat Bryant in the 18th. So this was pretty clearly drafted early. I don't know if it was like the first day of the tournament, but to get RJ Harvey in the 7th, Pat Bryant in the last round, and Travis Hunter in the 5th. This was not.
Yeah, I mean, he has 3 picks on his team that go at the 4-5 turn. 4, that's really. Good. I mean, 4 really, if you want to squeeze RJ Harvey in there, but he's got 4 guys that go in the 4th or 5th round, so that's hard to do.
Yeah, that's hard to do. Another
Turns
3
out
quarterback
the
team.
Like that.
Yeah, I know, weird. Just a very good team. Goods has this team here: Puka, Brian Thomas, Chase Brown, Mike Evans, Chuba Hubbard, Jalen Waddle, Tony Pollard, Aaron Jones, Mark Andrews, Jaden Higgins, Trevor Lawrence, Tua Tagovailoa, Jackson Dart's the 3rd quarterback here, Dallas Goedert, Romeo Doubs, Austin Eckler, Pat Freiermuth for a 3 tight end build, De'Ami Brown to go with Trevor Lawrence. Anything jump out about this team?
I mean, we think Tony Pollard's pretty undervalued. So getting Tony Pollard, if you're close to ADP, is always going to look pretty good. He's pretty balanced in the early rounds too.
Yeah.
This is another one though where it follows that same pattern as the last couple, where you're really strong in the early season, but your first rookie is Jaden Higgins here. And so I don't know that we get a rookie running back in this, do we?
No, and it's Austin Eckler, Aaron Jones, Tony Pollard, Chuba Hubbard, Chase Brown. So it is very like regular season focused, I would say. But I mean, yeah, you do have Jaden Higgins as kind of some firepower, and then Jackson Dart at the end is a little bit of quarterback rookie firepower. But that would make sense to me that this team would be better in the regular season than potentially in the playoffs.
Yeah, it is a very strong team. It's the 6th overall strongest score. So that's pretty good.
All right, let's move here to Hot Scissors. This one's a little blurry. Sorry. Justin Jefferson, Bucky Irving, Jonathan Taylor, Zay Flowers, James Cook. So we've got 3 running backs through 5, and then another running back. Now, if you have 3 through 5, should you take another running back? If it's RJ Harvey in the 7th, then the answer is absolutely yes. Jerry Jeudy, Cooper Kupp, Caleb Williams, Colson Loveland, DeAndre Swift, Jack Bech, Romeo Doubs, Matthew Stafford, Pat Freiermuth, Jaden Blue, nice price on him, Wandale Robinson and Tutu Atwell stacked up with Stafford there. Any thoughts here other than the really, really nice value on RJ Harvey definitely jumps out. A pretty nice value on Cook, who I don't take a lot of, but the end of the fifth there. No, I'm sorry. It's the beginning of the fifth, but still not too bad.
I think in general, a lot of people who consume a lot of best ball content, have been drafting for a while, might look at this and be like, oh gosh, you're a little light at wide receiver, right? But the Sims have really helped us evaluate, actually, you are just allowed to beat the shit out of everyone at running back and flex. And those points spend, those points are good.
Well, look at these points. I mentioned the Harvey one.
Yeah.
But the Swift one in the 11th. So 11th round DeAndre Swift
exactly.
and 16th round Jaden Blue. So this team is like loaded at running back and didn't spend a ton of capital. It's definitely spent a decent amount, but Bucky, Taylor, Cook through the first 5, and then to just get crazy values on your next 3 running backs. And you're only at 6 total. So this team's good at running back, like really good.
Yeah, that is allowed. The Sims did help us see that is in fact allowed.
I had to Shady double check the math. That's not even a joke.
Unironically, yes.
Unironically, had him check the math.
We also got Wandale going pretty late there in the 17th. Right now, he's sort of up into the thing, which helps a lot at the wide receiver that you're trying to shore up at the end.
That's a good point. All right, this team from J Dennis 22, Nico and Brian Thomas. I would say like getting good prices on 2 of these receivers is clearly something that scores well. Chase Brown, Tet McMillan, Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow with Chase Brown here, but you're getting a little bit of a value compared to where he tends to go. I mean, he kind of goes a little over the place, but didn't have to reach for him at the beginning of the 5th. Chuba Hubbard, George Pickens, another George Pickens, again, at the end of the 7th. That's nice.
Yeah.
DeAndre Swift, Michael Pittman. So receiver, you got 5 receivers through 9. This is a pretty strong team at receiver, I would say, even though you only have 3 through 6. So maybe a little less strong than the typical wide receiver avalanche type of drafter, but still like a very strong team at receiver. Jalen Warren, Trevor Lawrence, stacked up with Brenton Strange. You also have Jake Ferguson, Pat Freiermuth at tight end, and then 3 receivers to close. And that move pops up again. Also, Tyler Algier helping the running back depth. This team is like maybe a bit thinner than we've seen at least some of the running back rooms. Chase Brown, Chuba Hubbard, DeAndre Swift, Jalen Warren, and Tyler Algier. This team feels more like something like I would build generally, but it's I would say still has enough firepower even if it's not overloaded.
Yeah, this one's the weakest place for this team is the tight end, right? It punted tight end, but I think it did a pretty good job.
This team feels fine at tight end to me.
Yeah, you get Ferguson, Strange, and Freiermuth. I mean, I just think it's very strong at wide receiver, very strong at running back. You only have a 2 quarterback build, but you spent up on Burrow and you get
Burrow.
Lawrence, and we think the price on Lawrence is pretty nice right now. So he gets
for sure 2
solid quarterbacks there. Yeah, this one's just a very, very strong team overall.
Yeah, I would say like it's a good thing that the Sims like builds that Pat thinks is good sometimes, or a lot of the times, right? Like it would be if everything that Pat liked all the time, or that we're not trying to find something that says the intuition of best ball is always wrong. Although it is nice when you find little edges or things are not correct, but identifying things that are correct is a good way that you can like reinforce that what you've built is good. But then it's exciting when it finds other things that it likes as well that maybe don't look as comfortable or as familiar.
Yep. All right. J. Shap Rocky has this team here. Justin Jefferson, Lad McConkey, Terry McLaurin, and Rashee Rice. I'm counting this as 0 running back. This is our first true 0 running back.
How do you have
start.
Rice in the 4th?
Rice in the 4th is
that's crazy.
Good. Pretty good. Chuba in the 5th, and then Kamara. Chuba's not crazy in the 5th, but to see them paired with Kamara, and then Connor. So you have like 3 guys that tend to be more like
what is this?
You kind of had like 2 early 6th round picks on this team, which is pretty cool. Pat Mahomes to go with Rashee Rice, pick 91. That's pretty cool. Trey Harrison, Justin Herbert, David Njoku, Jake Ferguson, JJ McCarthy at pick 150 for the third quarterback on this team. Again, Sims don't really shy away from this type of build, even though I think a lot of drafters would say, including myself, would have been like, you do not need JJ McCarthy on this team. But it's a variant playoff structure, and also, you know, if you're taking guys who are outscoring the guys around them in the 13th round, adding points to your lineup throughout the regular season, that helps too. Adam Thielen, Austin Eckler, Brashard Smith, Jatavion Sanders, and Jalen Naylor. So this is another 3-1Z team, but strong at receiver, starts with 4, does get to 7, and then at running back, he grabs those 3 here, so makes use of the really good values, just tacks on 2, an Austin Eckler and a Brashard Smith, very obviously different profiles. It's a really fun team. I just find this team very appealing in a number of different ways. How did this one look in terms of like regular season versus end of the season?
It was balanced in the regular season. In week 15, it was about the same. It popped in week 16. I don't have all the week 16 correlation matchups committed to memory yet, but I would, just based on seeing like how high its week 16 grade is relative to other teams, there's got to be something going on in week 16 that's going good for this one. But it's pretty balanced across the way. I do think that Brashard Smith pick is really nice for it, because you have those 3 older running backs that I think are good values. And like, you know, you might feel gross clicking Alvin Kamara or James Conner or whatever, but we think they're good values. And if one or a couple of them do start to fall off, then you have the out of like, and what if Brashard Smith is just like really good? Like, what if he's good? That would be cool.
And that would be really nice for the Chiefs, who you have stacked.
Exactly. So, and great, you know, like, this will be one of the best Rashee Rice, Pat Mahomes stack values in the entire tournament.
Yeah, for sure.
Rashee Rice in the 40s, Pat Mahomes in the 90s.
Yeah.
That combination together is going to be very difficult to have.
You also have Herbert double stacked. So this is the type of team it's just easy to see it popping in a single week. Would be one reason that I think it has a lot of firepower for the single week purpose. I mean, you got Justin Jefferson, you got 2 stacked receivers in the second and fourth. Terry McLaurin can obviously pop off, and then you're potentially very strong at running back if these veterans stay healthy, or if your rookie flyer hits. Well done there to J. Shap Rocky. All right, Rupesh's team here. CeeDee Lamb, Devon Achane, Josh Jacobs, Xavier Worthy, Jalen Waddle, and then another good value on RJ Harvey. I mean, 6th round RJ Harvey, is that even that notable at this point? Now that we've seen multiple 7th round RJ Harveys. Jaden Reed, Luther Burden, Jaden Higgins. So another team that doesn't go nuts at receiver early, but is pretty good at receiver. 3 through 5, and then 6 through 9. Jordan Love, Dak Prescott, and Cam Ward. Jake Ferguson, Zach Ertz, and Chigakonkwo. So another double 3-1Z team. You're strong, you know, if you're strong at every position, that's good. Tyler Algier, Roschon Johnson helps fill out the running back depth. Tyler Lockett as the 7th receiver. So, I mean, okay, so you have 6 receivers through 9, then not a single receiver other than Tyler Lockett in the rest of the draft in the 17th round. That allows for the 3-1Zs, 3-1Z players at both the onesies. And then it also allows for you to tack on those 2 running backs, getting to 5, really leaning on these early running backs. This one kind of fits with some of the stuff we've talked about with the other teams, but this team looks really good to me. Thoughts?
Yeah, and I mean, getting both Tyler Algier and Roschon Johnson, who we think are both pretty good picks in those later rounds for what they do, I also think they fit really nice with this team, where what you're basically saying is Devon Achane, Josh Jacobs, and RJ Harvey should be hitting my lineup. You know, 2 of those 3 guys should be hitting my lineup most weeks. In the event that one of them doesn't, I've got guys that have some floor for me. You know, Tyler Algier will score some points in weeks, even when Bijan is playing, right? Roschon Johnson, presuming that the Bears go into the season with Swift and him as the backs, he'll score some points. They're not going to be so exciting, but you've got this safety in the bad outcomes for you. You still have a way to survive that regular season. And then you also have a way for this team to become supercharged where if the contingent upside is realized for either of those running backs, all of a sudden you have a guy, hypothetically, Bijan goes down and you're allowed to redraft right now. Where does Tyler Algier go?
If Bijan goes down, Tyler Algier, man, he would probably be in like the third or fourth round.
Third or fourth, right? Yeah. And, Roschon, I don't think goes quite as high because we've seen Tyler Algier be good and we haven't seen Roschon be as good. But still, you're taking guys where when that contingent upside hits, all of a sudden you've got an extra third round pick on your team, which is crazy. And he already had some pretty good values on this team. So I like this one a lot.
Yeah, I mean, this definitely fits with kind of the way I tend to build. So, I'm going to like it. The 3 onesies, not so much. I mean, more at, although I'm more open to that than I used to be. But the wide receiver firepower is what I meant. Like, this is kind of a team where I'm feeling really, really comfy when I finish out the single-digit rounds. The spot that, the point that I would make on this team is that this team's playing wide receiver at the flex, right? Especially early in the season. Maybe by the end of the season, to your point, with like Algier and Roschon, doesn't have to, but this team's playing wide receiver at the flex. That's generally how I've tended to build. We did talk about that team earlier, though, that's so strong at running back. And it's like that team's playing running back at the flex. I think that's one of the interesting things that I found in going through these teams is that they don't all win the same way. Some of them crush at running back. They're playing running back in the flex. They're getting by at receiver a little bit more than we would typically tend to advise trying to do. But in this particular build, we expect it to work pretty well. Some of them are really strong at the onesies, right? A lot of them are just like really good overall. But this team, I would say, is kind of how I have tended to construct teams where it's like, I'm going to play a receiver in the flex. And that also works pretty well. Let's look at the last few teams here. So I saved the light mode. We're almost done. Puka Nacua, Brock Bowers. I was worried we weren't going to have a Bowers team here, guys. Bowers, Rashee Rice in the late third. That's nice. Chase Brown, Chris Olave, Alvin Kamara, Jaden Reed, Tony Pollard, Christian Kirk, DeAndre Swift in the 10th. So some like veteran, boring running back production, but you didn't pay much for it. Kamara 6th, Pollard in the 8th, Swift at 110, and Chase Brown in the 4th. So really nice there. So that you come away from this build where you have Bowers and you're still really strong at running back. You're also really strong at receiver with the Rashee Rice value, Olave, Reed, and Kirk. And then rips off 3 straight quarterbacks after adding David Njoku. Jalen Tolbert, Braylon Allen, Will Shipley, and Zach Ertz to close out. So 3 tight end because you have Bowers. So, man, this team is really strong at both onesies, I would say. Stacked up Bowers with Geno, stacked up Puka, right? First round pick with Stafford. A little back stack here with Dak, right? There wasn't a
He's got the Tolbert, yeah.
Yeah, I got the Tolbert. So kind of just an underpriced Dak at 134, about 30 picks of CLV on that, and then 2 stacked quarterbacks behind him. Really nice value on Zach Ertz. So it's like, do you need a third tight end with Bowers? No, but what if you get Zach Ertz at 206? Should you take that? Yeah, I think that makes sense. So some ADP value doing the work here a little bit, but use that value to then kind of supercharge the team where you're strong at running back, tight end, and receiver, and then you end up strong at quarterback by just going 3 straight in 12, 13, and 14 with the value on Dak.
Yeah, this one, the Zach Ertz in the 18th is something I think a lot of people would not do with having Bowers and Njoku. But one of the things that the Sims really helped us see is if you're in the last round, a player like Zach Ertz will simply outscore all of these other guys, at a high enough percentage that it doesn't matter that he's a tight end. He will fill your flex more frequently than Jalen Royals fills your flex. He will fill your flex more frequently than Amari Cooper fills your flex. And so that is something where there is a certain point where you might think, oh, I'm good at this position. But if the room gives you such a great value, you probably should just take it. And that's something where in the previous landscape of drafting, where we didn't have the sims to help us really evaluate that, it can be hard to know, like, at what point is it enough value for me to tack this on. And so having a more fine-tuned approach to being able to say, actually, this guy does add more points to your team, you should just take him, to me has been one of the most helpful things as I've been drafting with the sims.
I agree. All right. So we are to the last two here, just pictures of the teams. So we've got Jaden Daniels, Kyler Murray at 114. Nice little value there. Devon Achane, Chuba Hubbard, Jordan Mason. Nice value on Mason. Tajay Spears, Rashad White, and Austin Eckler to round that out. So this is a team that is kind of like, it's pretty strong at running back. Spent a decent amount of capital at running back, although not, I guess, I don't know. I'm like, this is one of those teams where I'm like, I think you're good. Like, do you need Austin Eckler? But you do have, some kind of more backup profiles in Spears and White. So it does actually make sense. Puka, Harrison, Ridley, Pickens. Again, Pickens, pick 79. Josh Downs, Romeo Dobbs at pick 175. Jalen Coker rounds that out. And then Johnny Smith, Zach Ertz, and Dalton Schultz. Another team that I would say is pretty strong across the board. The Pickens pick really helps. And then we do like Josh Downs. So one of those teams where, like, you didn't have to spend a ton, but by getting a big ADP value on Pickens and Dobbs, getting Josh Downs as your wide receiver 5 does look pretty strong at receiver. And there's really no, like, clear weak spots for this team. Any thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I regret to inform you that we like Rashad White. Pre-draft, we were not very high on Rashad White in the rankings because we thought there was some probability that they would add a running back in the draft, and that'd be catastrophic for Rashad White. They didn't, but the price didn't change. So we were previously saying, hey, the reason that this guy should be low is this probability that they add a running back. That probability is now 0, but the market is treating it
close to 0.
Close to 0, sure.
They could sign Dobbins or something. Yeah.
Yeah. The market is now treating it like they are not going to, that they might still add someone at the same probability that we had in there before the draft. So he's one that often will show up as a value pick to me. He gets them after ADP. The good value on Jordan Mason, good value on Chuba, another guy that we like. The other thing that I think is worth noting is when you start with a wide receiver in the first round, it's just the way that the Sims treat it is so different than starting with a running back in the first round. And so it does give you a little bit more leeway to take a running back like Devon Achane in the second round, because in the Sims, they're like, yeah, Puka Nacua is just hitting your lineup almost every week. Like the times Puka Nacua doesn't hit your lineup, you either had some really great stuff happen for you because Marv, Calvin Ridley, Pickens, and Josh Downs all went crazy, or something catastrophically bad happened, and then it probably doesn't matter anyway because if Puka's out for the season, you're probably not advancing this team. So this is a really strong one. I mean, George Pickens values do seem to be a theme here, but there's a lot of good values on this one.
Pat, you've bumped your mute.
No, I was just agreeing that has definitely been a theme, but one that makes a lot of sense. All right, last team here. From Lowell's email, Lamar Jackson and CJ Stroud, RJ Harvey, Kenneth Walker, Tony Pollard. This is kind of a 0 running back team. All right. Kind of into this. RJ Harvey, Kenneth Walker, Tony Pollard, Bashal Tootin, Austin Eckler, and Justice Hill. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Nico Collins get the nice 1-2 start there. Zay Flowers, Emeka Ibuka, Rashid Shaheed, Wan'Dale Robinson, Michael Wilson, Ray McLeod. After the early investment at receiver, kind of not a ton of the middle types of picks other than Shaheed. And wow, a really nice value on Ibuka at 108. And then TJ Hawkinson and Kyle Pitts to close out. So just 2 at the onesies, some nice depth at running back, and a nice wide receiver room with a really nice value on Emeka Ibuka. Anything jump out to you guys?
Yeah, it does seem like we like those teams where you get two of these. And this is something that I think is specific to this year's draft landscape, which is also one thing that I think makes The Sims so cool is it helps us solve the puzzle as the puzzle changes every year. Last year, think about last year, taking a wide receiver at the end of the 1-2 turn, the quality of those two receivers is pretty different than getting Amon-Ra and Nico, right? Amon-Ra and Nico, those are like, if you think of the profile, that's like probably would have gone in like pick 6, pick 7 last year for like how we would evaluate them relative to. And so now you're getting them at pick 12 and 13. Part of it is because the receivers that are really good, the number of those is larger this year than it was last year, right? And so this second tier of like, hey, below the elites, but still like they're not quite Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, but they're that next drop down. There's a lot of guys in that bucket this year when there were fewer last year. And I think that the Sims are helping us identify like, hey, what if you just got like two of those really good receivers? That seems good.
Yeah. No, but that's such a good point when you're trying to like think through like, well, like how have receivers at the, pick 11 and 12 performed in the past? Or, like how should you build if you spent the 112 and, the 1 and the 201, your 12th and your 13th pick on receivers? Like, then what should you do? Well, what if you've drafted Amon-Ra St. Brown and Nico Collins is really the question. And those guys are going to score better than, it's not just us, I would say, who thinks this. Like, those guys are pretty nice values relative to, what we've tended to see, at least what we saw last year at the 1-2 turn. Last year at the 1-2 turn, we were taking Marvin Harrison.
And Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, and Cooper Kupp. So it's a little different. I think the profiles are just different, and that affects the way that you want to build teams ideally. So yeah, that'll makes a ton of sense to me. Should we go ahead and jump in a draft and show off what we're able to do here in terms of the way the sidekick is going to look now?
Yeah, let's go ahead and show off the dev version of what we're working on.
So this is the dev version. We are, as we mentioned, there's tens of thousands of Sims that Shaidy's created using the new rankings process that we have. We are gonna, when we roll this out, we are gonna continue to support custom rankings and all of those types of features with the Sims version as well. But this dev version is gonna show actually as we go a little bit of what's happening, behind the scenes with the Sims, where it's continuing to sample. So things are going to mix up a little bit more than you might be used to if you look at the sidekick. Shaidy, can you explain that a bit better than I just tried to?
Yeah, that's right. I think it's basically expressing the same way that if you're used to using the regular sidekick, you'll get different rankings sort of each time when you use a draft. You also get different set of Sims each time you're in a draft with the sidekick. And so this will be, rather than giving you the Sims for your draft at the start, which is what we do for things, this is like we're just getting different sets to have a peek at how things are going while we're building things out.
Yep.
So it'll be, some people move around a little bit more than you would expect, but that's just sort of giving you the idea of where they might show up in the range of Sims that we can.
Yeah, it's because it's from a different set of Sims. All right, this one looks like it'll fill faster, so we'll do that.
To me, one of the things that helps illustrate is it also helps show you how many different viable paths there are at different points in the draft. Like, the Sims are helping to show us the best pick in this instance, in this set of Sims that we're looking at. And
right.
So we can get so many different, very good options there. Really, what it comes down to is how do you chain all those together in the way that makes sense for this roster, where these profiles fit nicely together. I get enough to get me out of the regular season, but I'm also going to have that firepower down the stretch when I need it in the money weeks. So it is to me, I don't mind seeing it kind of bounce around. I know when we take it to the production version, when people will actually get their hands on it, we'll have it set so it's going to say, hey, these are the Sims
Yeah, they're consistent. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the part of the whole ethos of the dynamic rankings is that there are multiple good picks in any given point of really any draft. Sometimes there's one pick that's like, pretty clearly what you should do, but a lot of times you have multiple paths you can go down and build great teams either way. So we want to support that. That's why we built this the way that we did, so that you can take a look at the list of players that we have ranked, same as you would at the start of the draft.
Looks like we're in a 20-second draft, so we're going to have to talk a little bit quicker than we might normally.
Yeah, the 30-second was taking
too long to
fill, so I jumped in the 20.
I think as we go here, it's going to be interesting to talk about how, we built these Sims, but how do we make the sidekick? How does it behave differently given what this happens? So let's go see. It's going to be hopefully pretty fast. Let's see if we pick here in the first round, and then I'll talk a little bit about how you go about building algorithms for dynamic rankings, classically, and then also informed by Sims or using Sims.
Yeah, and so at the top of the draft here, we're going to be, looking at probably one of these two running backs here, Bijan or Jahmyr Gibbs. Very much in line with what you would expect in this spot. Bijan falls to the 106.
Oh, sure.
Easy enough. So yeah, get the guy going with a 3.9 ADP, the 106. That's not rocket science. But yeah, do you want to talk a little bit more about what you mentioned there with how we?
Yeah. So I tend to think about it like, what do we have to teach the dynamic rankings brain from us, right? And so when we were building the classic algorithm, we had to teach it all about what makes a good best ball roster. So we spent a lot of time thinking about draft capital spend at position, what's available, who stacks with your quarterback, labeling the teams and matching them around, all those sorts of things to do. Teach it the history of what makes a good best ball roster. The cool thing when you're using the Sims in the algorithm and simulating out teams that you could be building with the players who are available in the future is you don't teach it actually any of that stuff. You teach it the player scores. So we provide it with Sims about who scores what in every week and possible ways the season could play out. We teach it how best ball scores. So we teach it how to turn those seasons of scores into best ball rosters and the points they score in fantasy. And then we teach it how the advancement structure works and how much you get rewarded when certain things happen. So it knows how good it is, how likely it is, and how hard it is to advance, and all those things as you go along. So we're not actually telling it anything about what makes a good roster. We haven't talked it that stacking is good. We haven't told it that having upside in week 17 is good. So anything that comes out of it when we're using it, it has sort of learned itself as it's looking at your choices throughout the draft. And so as we were working on this, one of the coolest things for me wasn't the new stuff that came out, but that was pretty cool. It was seeing it know without having to be told, hey, you might want to stack your quarterback here, or you've got a double stack. You should really think about grabbing this player now before they go off the board. And you can see
the Sims like the Drake London fall. I would love to take Brock Bowers here, but what do you guys want to do?
They're both great picks. I mean, they're both really hard to get with Bijan. So I think
they're both hard to get with Bijan.
Awesome. I don't think
we might want to do London, who has the slightly higher ADP and is harder to get with Bijan.
My other thing for this room specifically is like maybe there will be someone. Maybe there's just not enough people who want to draft an early tight end behind you, and so Bowers can satiate the one person who would
right. And McBride comes back.
Get McBride back, but.
Well, yeah, Bowers goes next. Man, both are really fun starts. What happened to make that happen? So Tyreek.
Well, you got Tyreek Hill and T. Higgins going early.
Yeah, T. Higgins, that was the other one. Okay.
And AJ Brown flipped London, right? He usually goes.
AJ Brown flipped London, yeah.
Not as much as the other ones. Oh, Bowers too, I guess, can sometimes go a little to the right there, depending on if you're using sidekick rankings or not.
Yeah, if you're in a room with any of us, Bowers doesn't get.
Yeah, Bowers. I mean, passing on Bowers for correlated Drake London.
I know that hurt you.
It did. It honestly did. But Drake London's very fun too. Very fun. I think Shady, one of the things that's really interesting about doing stuff is it feels like you can kind of test ideas a little bit, and test ideas for a specific landscape. So there's the ADP shift, and they have shifted wildly from a few years ago, right? We can actually kind of see if what we're thinking about this landscape ends up, kind of making sense, at least in terms of what the math is telling us with the teams that we're building. Is that kind of the way you think about it?
A really concrete example from this year is the late round quarterbacks are just a lot different, I think, than they were last year. And so when we were working on the classic algorithm, we had to tell it about that future dynamic that's going to exist in the draft. There's just not going to be the same kind of quarterback available anymore. So we needed to change how we were thinking. Yeah, Rice.
This is windmill for Rashi.
Incredible. Yeah. With this start too, you get Rashi back on it. Yeah. We all have equity in this team, right, Pat?
Yes.
So I was saying we had to adjust. We had to explicitly tell the classic algorithm that things have changed. We need to think more about quarterback when that quarterback window and things like that. The Sims have just picked up on that, right? If we had deployed the Sims last year, it would have known the players who are available later in each round as it's making thinking through all the decisions it should be making, and would have come to different conclusions. But we didn't have to. I mean, we did have to because we had to make the classic algorithm keep working. But for the Sims, we didn't have to tell it that and go through. And the same thing is true as the drafts shift throughout the year. As soon as it also works in other formats, right? That's the cool thing. You talked about this a little bit briefer. We don't have to teach it anything about Superflex, for example. We just tell it the new way that rosters are constructed. We tell it the new ADPs where players are going and who's available later, and we kind of just let it solve itself. Same for the Eliminator. You just change the scoring and the way that you move through and how you're rewarded for the scoring. And it'll just think through those situations and what results in good rosters based on the rules of the game you're playing, rather than the rules of a good team that you have to program into it.
Yeah, and that's the really, really cool thing about being able to support other formats with the Sidekick and have dynamic rankings for those formats, which is what we're working on right now as part of rolling this out to a production version. That would have just taken a long. I don't play that much Eliminator, so am I gonna be able to have all the right stuff in place to make sure that it's providing good dynamic rankings? Honestly, no. But I don't have to do that. So that's awesome. All right. So it was looking like we might get one of these.
That could have been super fun.
That could have been very, very fun. So it's down to reach here for Kittle, and now we bump to a different. So Kittle and Hurts, two guys that we think are very underpriced here. Hurts is interesting. We could try to push one of them. What do you guys think about that? Grab Travis Hunter and try to push Hurts or Kittle?
I'm more of a take one of Hurts or Kittle because when I first started questioning the Sims are trying to get me to reach for Jalen Hurts or George Kittle or Joe Mixon, I didn't think through all the way that the best combination that I actually can have is both of these players, getting Jalen Hurts and George Kittle. And by pushing them both, you deny yourself the outcome where you end up getting both of them, because you're only going to get one come back to you in the 5th round. And so that's actually something that, Sean Siegel has talked about before on when he's got his guys that he's really high on that all go in the same round. He's like, I'm just going to take Brock Bowers a round early. Then I'm going to take Jaden Daniels in the next round. And that worked out pretty well for him last year. And so sometimes there will be times where it's hey, there's just one guy that's really clearly the best pick here, but I could totally push him to the next pick. And then you can do that. You can have the freedom to get greedy.
That's a big thing to touch on, though, is that's not we're drafting. And so figuring out how do I get the players that I actually want, on my team isn't as simple as, now I'll take Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts might come back. George Kittle might come back. And so I was pretty tempted. If I was doing this myself, I think I'd just take Travis Hunter there, to be honest, because I think I get one of Jalen Hurts and George Kittle. To your point, having both is pretty cool, but I'll probably get one. And I also really like Hunter. He was up there as well. I think he was, the second recommendation. So that's something to keep, to keep in mind and to keep an eye on what everyone else in your room is doing. Like this guy's got 4 running backs over here. His behavior is going to be different than like the average, drafter in your room. And you want to be thinking about that for sure. Doing stuff where you're pushing stuff around the turns and just trying to figure out ways that you can sometimes push for ADP value is something that I'm going to be doing in all of my drafts this summer. It is not something that is evaluated in this version of the Sidekick at all. Unfortunately, Martin Hampton goes here. We probably should take DK Metcalf or RJ Harvey. I'm kind of leaning Harvey. Where are you guys at?
Yeah, I'm into Harvey here. My other my thing here about pushing George Kittle around the turn was you had 2 guys behind you with an elite tight end, and I don't see very many people take double elite tight end with the Bowers and McBride guys. So I'm thinking I gotta just fade 3 guys from taking Kittle, and I could potentially get him back there. So that's why I would have been Hurts there, and then I think I've got a decent chance to get Kittle. And if my consolation prize is RJ Harvey, who's one of my most drafted players, I'm pretty happy with that as a consolation prize. So if my consolation prize was all players I'm not that into.
Whoa. Tua.
Early. You've got somebody who wants to make sure they don't lose the Tyreek stack.
You got the stack.
A star. It could be a star.
Davis Maddox star method.
Yeah. I do think the Hurts and Kittle are actually different than a lot of situations because even though Tua apparently, but also Burrow goes around this spot, we think that Tua and George Kittle are like vastly different than the players in their positions who come later. They're the last of a certain Hurts and Kittle.
Yeah,
whatever. So those 2 players are just significantly. Tua is also different if he's going here, but they're just like your last chance at that kind of player. And so it's less like you're less thinking about I'm reaching for somebody. It's like this is my last chance to build this kind of team, and we think that both of them are good players. And so when you do that, you're like constructing this last option to do it. And sometimes it doesn't happen. Or you may have decided.
That's a really good point, though. Like if you want to build an elite quarterback team, that's last call.
This is it. Yep. And maybe you also get an elite tight end. We also don't know here that maybe you decide you actually wanted a stacked Hurts more than an unstacked Hurts so far through the draft. So if you would grab Devonta a little earlier, then maybe you hope for a Hurts to fall. There's lots of things you can do to like plan ahead for that possible fall if you'd rather do something else here.
I'm eyeing up Juwan Jennings, who to me is like the reason to take our Harvey over Metcalf. Where are you guys at?
He makes sense here because I think we are going. The best pick in the next round is going to be a running back, like almost assuredly. And so
that's another. So you're looking at like we've got running backs, but we've got Judkins. Swift is already starting to pop up. So if I'm going to take a running back in the 7th, why not just go ahead and take the receiver here? And Jennings does pop to the top when we're actually on the clock, but he was kind of in the mix there with a few other options. So to me, I'm thinking, let me grab the receiver and push the running back. But I would say, I mean, this team could handle 2 running backs. Then we're going to be behind. We're probably going receiver 8, 9, maybe even 10. But I think we can probably dig out at receiver in this environment, even with like 2 through 6 or 2 through 7. It's putting ourselves behind the 8 ball in some ways, but I think it's doable. Personally, I like going Jennings there, though.
We also know we like a lot of the running backs. Like the Sims know that's what Jennings sort of like the things. A lot of options were there. We like the running backs in this round, but we also like some of the running backs a little bit later. So it's giving you. It's not forcing you into one position right now because all these paths can lead you towards teams that we think are good.
Yep. We also have Swift a little bit lower there. This is where you are starting to see some guys bounce around a little bit more, given some swingier profiles a little bit.
Well, things just get closer here. We think there's earlier there was less of a difference, or there
Yeah.
there was such a big difference between Jalen Hurts, George Kittle, and all the other picks that they were showing up at the top all the time. And now we think that, we thought David Montgomery, if he got there to you, was a good enough value that it was like, yeah, just take that guy. But here we'll see it, bounce around a little because we think these players are closer together.
Yep. Okay, so we got Shakir, Laporta, Swift, Golden. Golden was kind of the guy I was eyeing. What do you guys want to do?
I think Shakir's fun with the Week 17 bring back for Hurts.
That's a great call. Yeah, I like that.
No notes. The math was good. I like that it was up top.
Yeah, it's very fun. Fun little bring back.
The other thing I'm thinking of is like, what's the chance that I could get DeAndre Swift to come back to me? It's probably not great. He's got an ADP of 80. But that is eventually we'll add something to the sidekick where we'll have like a push tag, like we have quarterback, teammate, Week 17 and buy overlap. We'll have a tag that lets you know, hey, you could think about pushing this guy. He's got a good chance of coming back to you. Or, hey, if you push this guy, it's unlikely he's coming back to you. Just to help with that, we talked about earlier, hey, that's one of the things.
It's a roadmap feature that we're looking to add. Not something we would expect to. First, we're focused on getting this in your hands kind of as it looks now. But it is something we do want to add.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think a key thing to be thinking about in your drafts is that, can I push this guy around? Can I add value by getting better values? So yeah, that's a really important thing to mention. All right, so here we got Aaron Jones. I don't take much Aaron Jones, like at all, but pretty easy to see why he would make sense on this team. RJ Harvey, Bijan Robinson. You only have one running back through the middle of the eighth. He does go, but easy enough to see why he was being recommended there. Now we have Diggs. Diggs is getting like a little bit of an ADP fall, I would say, here. I don't know if we care that much about that, given why he's falling. The Luther Burden would be my pick here. What are you guys at?
Yeah, I think Burden's totally fine. I probably would have done Diggs there just because I think that we might quickly get this Diggs sliding stuff stopping. I think it's more a moment in time rather than a thing that's going to be a consistent trend. He's at OTAs already and practicing, and there's already clips on Twitter about how, wow, Stephon Diggs looks pretty good for a guy who tore his ACL last season type stuff. So I think the slide is probably short-lived there. So I would have just grabbed the ADP value that I don't think I'm going to be able to get later.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's fair. The running back is kind of the position that we really need now. And you are starting to see, Mason, Jalen Warren, Tyrone Tracy really pop up. We've got Bashal Tutins, Cam Scattaboo a little further down. We do have the Burden, a little bit of a bring back on Jawan Jennings. Quarterbacks, not right this second probably, given the need at running back, but we do have some quarterbacks on the list a little further down. And then also some rookie wide receiver upside is popping up a little bit. But here we're starting to see the running backs. It's mixing around a little bit with different samples, but one of these running backs, that's where my head is at. I would like to grab one of these running backs.
I'd want to get one of these running backs ideally. And then my alternative is probably looking at maybe what if I grab like an Evan Ingram or something instead? Knowing that I'm totally if all the running backs are gone, I'd probably do that. But if there's one of those running backs, I'm probably going to want the running back instead.
So Tracy goes, Mason goes. It's a little bit of a bummer. He fit the team, I would say, the most neatly. Trey Harris is certainly an option. But But yeah, I think
Jaylen Warren is probably the one that I would be into the most here. But also,
yes.
The Sims do think that you could take tight end here because most of the running backs went. But yeah, I'm with Warren or
Warren is. I mean, I like Jaylen Warren. I'm down to do that.
I twist your arm there. You draft Jaylen.
Yeah. But yeah, the tight ends and the running backs are all pretty even here. We'd be pushing running back 3 a little bit. It's okay, but I think we grab it. With
one thing that the Sims do take into account pretty well that I really like seeing when I'm watching it happen is normally Jaylen Warren would be the top pick for you there. Just in my experience drafting with the Sims a bunch as we've been doing testing. Do you want to guess why he wasn't the very top pick there?
Bye weeks?
Yeah, you only had 2 running backs on your roster already, and one of them shares a bye with Jaylen Warren. So it'd be cooler if we could get a guy with a similar profile, similar ability to score points that doesn't share a bye already. Not the end of the world. He's still very near the top, but normally Jaylen Warren, I'm telling you from experience, he would be the top guy there.
We're not even that hot, Warren. This year.
It's just I've done a bunch of testing, and so in this situation where you're like, I only got 2 running backs, I'm in the 10th round, and all these other ones went already, it would have been pounding the table for Warren. But it is cool to see it kind of ease off a little bit there and be like, you guys got the same bye. You can do something different.
We're starting to see Goddard pop up. He was higher with the last run than this run, but that's one, a kind of classic case where it's like, hey, man, you don't really need to do that now, probably. But what it's saying is, like, Goddard, it's very valuable to this team. I think that's the information, right? Goddard's really valuable to this team. What I would do with that information is push Goddard at least another round or maybe 2 rounds, given his ADP. What do you guys want to do here? We could go Tootin, we could go Purdy, Caleb. I like all those options a lot.
I think Purdy's fun.
Purdy we got with Jennings and the bring back.
Bring back, yeah.
Yeah. Tootin definitely.
He fits what we need.
Pretty
really
strongly
well
about that.
Too, right? Because you're just you're looking for that upside. You got Bijan who's going to lock down one of your spots, and then Warren is kind of a stabilizing force. He's got some upside, but Tootin is swinging for the fences.
Yeah, we could maybe have pushed quarterback, but it seems like the quarterbacks are going to get snapped up here. Not a lot of quarterbacks have been taken on this side of the board, and then Goff and Prescott come right off. So I doubt Tootin comes back, but I don't think Caleb or Purdy was coming back, although Caleb's still there. So now we are starting to see these tight ends kind of gravitate towards the top. Goddard, again, just a very strong pick for this team. But Goddard's ADP is, where is he?
140.
142.
So he's one where you could push him, but he's going to be closer to like 50-50 to be gone by your next pick.
139, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm inclined to push him if it's Tootin, but what am I gaining by pushing him if it's not Tootin? Right? At that point, I think I just take Goddard. So Goddard's bouncing around a little bit with the other tight ends, but
Cedric Tillman at pick 123, hot dog.
Come on, give me Bashal Tootin here. Bashal Tootin is the running back 4 on this team would be very, very nice. You don't need Bashal Tootin, my man. Just one more pick.
Just don't time out and auto it. That would be very sad.
Oh my gosh.
Oh no. Yes.
Hey.
I never thought I'd be so happy to see someone take Kyle Williams.
Oh, and the sample of the Sims had Tootin at the top, so it's really meant to be.
Well, I think that was just going to happen. Tootin is kind of
he's been there for a while.
There was not much rotating going on.
There was a chance for Goddard to flip just because he is such a good pick for your team.
Yeah. All right, so
this is a fun one, man.
This is a fun one. We got the bring back on Purdy. We got the bring back on Hurts. We don't have Hurts stacked. But, he's one of those quarterbacks where if you didn't have him stacked, it's not the end of the world. And we are hoping we get him stacked, right? Fingers crossed.
Yes.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. But all these tight ends now starting to pop up is we don't have a tight end yet. We're, reasonably strong running back with the first-round running back, R.J. Harvey, Jalen Warren, Bashal Tootin. It's not like a position of strength, but it's not, I would say, a weakness either. And then receiver looking pretty good.
One of the things that I really like about drafting with the Sims is with the classic sidekick algorithm, a lot of the time when you got really behind at a position, we would freak out and be like, oh no, you don't have any tight ends yet? You need one. And so even if the tier was, totally depleted, we'd be like, are you sure
Right.
though you don't
There's
want
a weakness
a guy?
of that. Yeah.
And same with
Yeah.
where I really felt it before was at wide receiver. If you were in a real wide receiver avalanche and the room just got totally depleted at wide receiver,
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people drafted like this anyway, with or without the sidekick, where you'd reach for the receiver, right? That's like the normal behavior in avalanche rooms is, oh, well, I gotta stay ahead and beat the avalanche. Beautiful.
Nice.
We got
this is really great for us.
But the Sims will actually sometimes tell you, no, you don't need to reach here. Like the avalanche has come and gone. There will be wide receivers later that are the same as the wide receivers here. But you know what is not available later is, these running backs that score this many points. Like you can't get those later. So go ahead and take those. That's your prize for being a little light at wide receiver and just do that. And so the Sims really helped me not to panic when I get behind it and understand like how to really adjust my strategy on the fly in a draft, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's like drafting bad players is rarely the solution, But like I've done that. I've done where like I'm behind, so I have to draft receiver. But it's not receiver. It's like specific human beings who play receiver and might not be very good at it. So why not take if there's values at other position where you still need depth, maybe just do that. If it's Stark, it's not always Stark. Sometimes there's like, well, there's this one receiver actually who's undervalued in this range. Grab him. If Tootin hadn't been there, we would have moved on from running back. That's like an example, right? We would have gone to tight end. But Tootin did come back, which thankfully he did because we get Goddard, the guy we would have taken instead of Tootin, one pick later. So, it's just really it's always about the profiles, I would say. Rachaad White, we mentioned that we like him. I think he fits nicely on this team.
He does. He's beautiful.
Standalone. Yeah.
This is gonna make you mad, so don't be too mad. Is he not just kind of like diet Jalen Warren?
No, he is. That doesn't even make me mad. He gives you contingent. I know it's not like pure contingent value because they would have like Sean Tucker would mix in. It's not like Rachaad White would be like the smashiest smash, but he did pay off a 7th round ADP 2 years ago pretty easily. He was going in the 5th round last year, 5th, 6th, but still. This is, a profile that we know can score points when given opportunity because he catches passes really well and he's big enough to get used around the goal line a bit. So the contingent value's there. And then I do think there's some standalone too. I don't think he's just like completely dead to add, especially because he has that receiving profile, pass blocking profile. I think they trust him. It's just such a boring pick. But on a team like this, where you have the upside already with Tootin and Harvey and Robinson, obviously, he kind of makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, he's a great fit. And that I do love just like kind of how do all these profiles fit together best for this team? That's one thing.
That's really the big thing with that. That's the thing I'm most excited about this is fitting profiles together, which, with the way the sidekick was working previously, it's like, let's make this pick and then I'll discuss that. So Kyle Pitts and Freiermuth. I mean, honestly, Pitts is kind of awesome for this team.
Yeah, he's like 15 picks past ADP too. Why not? You got him stacked up with the team stack. You're just saying Atlanta's good this year. That team level correlation does be helping.
Yeah. So previously, it's dynamic rankings, and we were doing it with kind of more the positions and then moving around. Well, not just the positions, but I'm ranking the players, right? And I'm trying to put all of these factors into a rank. And then as we move the ranks around to reflect what you've done in the draft, there can be, if I tend to like rookies, because of the late season upside that they provide, it's pretty easy to see how you might end up with too many rookies on one team if the rankings are being dynamically adjusted to reflect kind of what you've done in terms of team level correlation and structure and all of that. This is really going to help in that regard. That's not what's happening anymore. It's not that like I really like this rookie and I'm trying to like bake his upside into a rank. We're able to actually look at the fantasy outcomes that we expect to happen throughout the entire season and then pair those profiles together in ways that should help us not just advance but win the tournament. Shaidy, does that appropriately sum up the difference?
Yeah, I think it does. The thing I was thinking through, there are things that this lets us think through that I don't know how we would have done before. Like, what happens if you have two QBs and one gets injured in week 16 and doesn't play in week 17? That happens in The Sims for this team. And so it's advanced all the way, and now you're in the finals. It lets us think through that situation. Is it worth grabbing somebody to solve that situation or not? Or is it the value you give up to get all the other outcomes to happen not worth covering that injury when it happens? What kind of player covers that team best, right? Yeah, I think Pat Bryant is great.
Yeah, week 17 bring back rookie.
Yeah. Awesome.
And so it's like keeping track of these things in a mental stack that I think if you had like 6 Pats all doing the same draft, all keeping track of different parts of your drafts, and then like all speaking up and saying, okay, I kept track of this part. This is who's best because of this thing is going on. I kept track of this other part, and this is what's going on. It's like helping reduce, like take care of all those mental stack things and try to solve for it. And some of them, I don't think Pat would have known the answer to, and it helps us solve those too.
Come on, man. Come on. That's just rude. To me, it's like when people have asked, like, do you prefer slow drafts or fast drafts? And it's like, honestly, I prefer fast drafts because I'm paying more attention. I'm more dialed in, but I should prefer slow drafts where I have so much more time to pay attention, but I know what's going to happen. I know I'm going to end up at the bar, and firing picks at some point during this draft. So to me, it is fast because I'm bringing that mental energy and thinking about all of these different things, holding all this information in my head at the same time. The Sidekick is helping you maintain that information that you probably already have in your head to a large degree, but it can be tough to kind of keep track of all at once as, a 20-second draft is flying by. So Rico Dowdle at the top of the list here, I do think he makes sense. It's kind of another, bet on filling out the running back depth here, a little bit of contingent value. We have 2 tight ends. We got 2 quarterbacks. We're pretty good at receiver. Seems like a really good pick for this team.
Yeah, this is one of those spots where I wouldn't even be surprised to see any position come up if they sort of slot it well. We've built a strong team, and like that's sort of also indicative that we have built a good team through now, right? If you really badly needed a certain position to be good at the end of the draft, unless you thought there was a surplus of that position that was good at the draft for some reason at the end, you might have not built a very good team. If you're like, oh shit, I need a quarterback. Like sometimes it happens in a room. It all happens. Sure. They go wild, particularly on DraftKings. You're like, well, I guess this is the Tyler Shuck and Aaron Rodgers team. Like it just happens. Well, here we go. Here's a good example of anything being possible, right? Where there are times where it's okay to have a third and now different set of Sims. Maybe not as important to have.
Right. See, yeah. Right? Shuck's starting to bounce around a little bit because sometimes he might actually add value. I had a Jalen Hurts team in the 2022 season on DraftKings. And as people remember, he got hurt at the end of that year. And I did not advance in week 16, barely. If I took a 0 quarterback and barely did not advance. And then he didn't end up playing in week 17. So I would have been dead anyway. But that's a spot where it's like, yeah, would have been nice to have a quarterback actually. But Hurts was also the reason I got there. So stuff like that does happen. Dalton Schultz here is a third tight end. He's been kind of floating around near the top. I'm totally good with it. Do you guys have any other players who jump out?
Seems great for us.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so we got 2 quarterbacks. I'm guessing we do only end up with 2. Aaron Rodgers is popping around. Some of these guys who might, potentially add to the team and in certain outcomes are starting to float up a little, but certainly not necessary. Then we have 6 running backs. We've got 6 receivers. We could add another receiver, but man, the receiver room is pretty good in terms of both production and late season upside. So it's not like you have to. I think my guess is we end up adding a running back or receiver here. Jatavion's still like semi in the mix as a 4th tight end, but I don't think we need to do that necessarily either. This is a long way of saying I think this is probably a luxury pick.
Yeah, for me personally, like when I get into situations like this and I don't have a very specific like 18th round target that I'm thinking like, oh, I'm different than what the rest of the rankings crew feels about this player. I want to make sure I start getting this guy on teams. I'm probably just saying, hey, the Sims are going to help me diversify this, given all the rates that these events occur in the Sims. That'll be helpful to just help me break this tie on this last pick, because there's so much stuff to hold on into in your head at this point where you're like, well, Blake Corum's contingent upside is pretty good in the seasons where Tootin's a bust, but I do end up having Rico Dowdle get the contingent upside realized. So it's so much stuff to hold on to. And it's like, unless I've got a really specific thing I'm wanting to do, using the Sims and the Sidekick to help me break ties at frequencies that are reasonable, to me is very helpful. It just takes a big weight off my shoulders of something that I no longer have to spend mental energy on.
Yeah, we are seeing some third quarterbacks pop up near the top, but ultimately, this is what I was hoping.
Yeah, Giddens
ended up being the top recommendation. It is. I was going to pound the table for Giddens no matter what. People who drafted with me know that's true. Giddens floating to the top here feels like an appropriate way to close this draft out.
Roster.
Not a structure that I would normally do with Bijan Robinson. 7 running backs with Bijan Robinson. But RJ Harvey is my only other running back. Our only other running back through the first 100 picks. It actually makes sense to build out some running back depth beyond the normal like 5 or 6 that you would have with a Bijan. Any thoughts on the structure here?
Yeah, I think we're pretty going to be relatively balanced in the flex, where we could probably see a wide receiver or a running back hit our flex. There will be some drafts that I've done with the Sims where it's like, yeah, this team running backs dominating your flex or wide receivers dominating your flex. The big thing to me is that when you take a running back versus a wide receiver in the first round, the Sims treat it totally differently. Where if you look how heavily we prioritized wide receiver here after, you get Hurts and Harvey, but then other than that, the Sims were like, and we think there's lots of really good running back picks in this range, like where you took Juwan Jennings. A lot of
and Jennings could have been Judkins, or that was not like a slam dunk. And
Shakir oftentimes could be Swift, but because we don't have that first round wide receiver to help hold down that position room, the Sims are just leaning towards, I probably should just take more wide receivers earlier here, even in the face of some running backs that we really like. And it'll be a starkly different strategy than if you had started heavier at wide receiver. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm kind of wishing we'd done things in the other order. I'm just a little sad at all of our ADP values on these after seeing all these sick teams that we just looked through. They got like 4 rounds of value compared to these, but I like the team in this current draft environment. It's just fine.
Shady, we might still get CLV, right? Like,
there's some future things I'm going to be happy about on this team for sure. It's just, it was a little bit of a RJ Harvey in the 7th.
No pick 80 George Pickens on this team.
Yeah. I mean, we got Bashal Tutin a little bit of a value. That's a little ADP value. Rashee Rice at 30 almost.
Yeah, Rashee Rice is nice. We got the Bijan and London values too, so that was good.
Also, for a stream, the non-streamed draft, for those of you watching this, we didn't stream this. This is a very badgy room for just a random BBN on a.
Yeah, that's true. Not a live stream. Not a live stream, and we still got.
This is a real all badges and only one non-red badge.
Yep. All right.
We did get our Tua friend, so thank you for that. Whoever decided.
Yes, that's true. We'll have to see. How did the Tua guy land the plane?
He looks like he recovered after Tua.
Yeah, I mean, that must have just been a star method, right?
Davis Maddox star method.
Yeah, this is a bit of a star method. Yeah.
You like to see someone recover when that happens. I did that. Was it 2 weeks ago? I was clicking between drafts and clicked in to take who'd end up being Brandon Ayuk in the first. Was one of my first picks. It was not great, but we still landed that plane eventually. Though I doubt it will grade out very well. That being the first pick.
All right, I think we can close this out. You guys, have anything we should mention? I mean, I guess I'll mention that. The tentative plan here is to get this to a beta where we can have people jump in and give it a shot and make sure that it's still the reason for the beta would be making sure that if everyone's jumping on and testing this version out, that the old version still kind of chugging along doing its thing as we work on supporting all of this in a widely released product. So that's the reason there that we're very likely to kind of launch this that way, and hoping that will be soon. We'll have more on exactly when, as we know more about that. But that is kind of the next step in getting this in your hands, and we'll be putting more news out when we have it. Anything else?
Can't wait for you guys to play with us. It's so much fun.
It is quite fun. All right, that'll do it. Thanks so much for watching. Check everything out we got going on at Legendary Upside. Check out the Sidekick, which is about to get pretty big upgrade. And thanks for watching. Talk to you later.